Welcome in to the Skol Purple podcast, and we are joined by Kevin Brown. And Kevin, how are you today?
Great. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's good to have you on, and of course, I know you have become kind of a draft guru, more specifically for the Vikings. But you enjoy this kind of thing, and we wanted to share with everybody your big board and talk about it, and just get your thoughts on some of these players that are going to be available from a Vikings perspective, but also a little bit with the NFL just in general. I know you want to talk a little bit about that as well. So, should be a fun time. Are you excited for the draft?
Always. Yeah. It's become kind of a year-round thing, but yeah, this is the run-up to the big day. So
That's right.
the big
That's
three
right.
days even. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was just talking to you before we started this that it just kind of feels like we're at the point that we just need the draft to happen because everybody's got their mock drafts in. I think everybody's had a good dose of it. I think
yeah,
everybody's given their takes. Oh, should the Vikings trade up? Will they trade up? Will they trade down? Will they do this? Will they do that? It's like, all right, I can
let's see
only
what's
take
going to
so much
happen.
of that,
Yeah, let's see
Yep.
what's going to happen now.
Let's get to that point. That's kind of where it was too. Like with baseball season, I don't know how much of a baseball fan you are, but that's kind of where it was with that situation. Just agree to something, the labor dispute.
Yeah,
Agree to
let's play
something so we
ball.
can play baseball. But
Right, right.
let's go ahead and dig right in here. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here if I can. And we are going to go over Kevin's mock draft big board, and we are going to go ahead and do that here as I try to get it up. Any things initially you want to say about your big board, Kevin, before we show it here?
Yeah. So I try when I stack this, I try to go through the whole process and try to remain as agnostic as I can, like not team specific. But ultimately, it's impossible to stack a board without thinking of a specific team. And obviously, we want to talk about the Vikings. So I've tweaked this to be a little more Vikings relevant, maybe through their lens. And then the other thing, so the grade scale I have used for years is just a numerical thing, and I've color coded it sort of to group players of the same value. And I guess that's the point I'd make. Like I have 10 guys that are rated a 6.9, and so those guys are really closely grouped all together, the same grade, and they conceivably could go in almost any order. And then similar with the different groupings as you go down, and I think once you get past the first round, I think most teams are looking at a more of a horizontal board that shows players weighted by positions, and it's an easier, cleaner way for them to see, how much depth is still available at a given position and match it up with needs and stuff like that. But also to make sure that they're still taking value. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and dig right into the draft board that you've got assembled here. I know your original one that you gave me last week was more tailored as a whole, but now we've kind of mixed it together as such as maybe the Vikings would mix their draft board together. So let's go through the top five or so here and let I think everybody is talking about this, and you've even gotten to the point where you're putting Trevon Walker ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. Let's talk about that. What sticks out to you the most about Trayvon Walker that puts him above Aiden Hutchinson, who really for the most of the draft season, except for like the last month maybe, has kind of been the uh, number one prospect for so many people. But now it's changing. What do you feel are some of the reasons behind that?
Yeah, and from what I understand, the Jags, probably going to pick one or the other, and supposedly the owner wants Hutchinson, and Balky wants Walker. The thing that moved me on Walker was watching more tape, and I watched some tape of some individual workout stuff, and I guess his movement skills and his twitch to me looked better than it did on film. And he reminded me a little bit of Daniil Hunter when he was young, when he first came out, like that rare, like he just looked leaner, not just a big physical brute. And then the other thing is, I've been studying, trying to understand how this 3-4 defense works and stuff. And I think Hutchinson is a pure edge guy, and I think Walker is a guy that's built that he could be a base end, and he could stand up and be an edge rusher. And like the Rams figure out a way to utilize Aaron Donald in a 3-4, even though he's not a prototype 3-4. Well, this guy would be, a real challenge as a 3-4 end, as a down lineman. And then I think he has the long range potential once he's has the feel, to move around a lot and be, just more of a complementary weapon to the edge guys the Vikings have now with Hunter and Zedarius. So I think he, for them, I think he'd be the fit, and I think athletically and grade wise, I don't think you're making a compromise. I think Hutchinson's going to be a really good player, but I think that's why Walker could be the better fit, and I think that's why the Jags are considering that too, is they run a 3-4 base.
Do you think it has something to do? You mentioned that flexibility, and you kind of note that here too. The defensive tackle and linebacker. Is that really what appeals to most teams the most? You think over Aiden Hutchinson? I mean, maybe he could play interior if you wanted him to, but you
Yeah, I
feel
think
like Travon
I,
Walker's
yeah, I think
situation would be a
I
little
think
bit better
Hutchinson
for that.
is yeah, I think Hutchinson's a 4-3 end or a pure edge rushing outside guy. I don't think he's going to be as effective, you know, lining up inside as much. I mean, he's athletic enough to do it certainly, but his length and build and you know, I think anchor, kind of thing. I just think he's not. He's a great fit for a 4-3. If the Vikings were still running a 4-3, he probably would be a better fit for that. But Zadarius Smith probably wouldn't have been a fit for that either. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and then you look too also at the 40-yard dash and the differences there. I mean, I think that has to appeal to teams as well.
And the 10-yard time, the 154 10-yard time, like
Mm,
that shows some twitch for a big man. In fact, you'll notice it's a couple tenths faster than Stingley. Like that is a really
wow.
rarely explosive 10-yard time. And for what I saw on tape originally with Walker was sometimes he was late coming off the snap, but that isn't a physical thing. Like that's just a timing, mental, snap anticipation thing. But the twitch is there, and I think that's what enables him to be effective lining up inside as well, where it isn't just all you know long speed around the edge. And he maybe doesn't have great bend for a 4-3 end, but with that kind of speed and that kind of first step quickness, he's going to win a lot of battles against offensive tackles, even if they know that's what's going to come. So
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and round out your top five here. Let's talk about Ikem Ikwanu and Evan Neal specifically before we get into Derek Stingley. What's the big differences between those two in your mind?
Yeah, I think Aquano is just more of a physical tone setter. Um, I think he's really high end intelligence, a real just more of a finisher than Neil. Neil probably looks the part better, has more length and stuff like that. Um, but I just think that Aquano brings a little more personality, and you know
That's a position you need personality.
exactly. So I think they both have everything it takes to be Pro Bowl level players. Um, I just think that, and I think they both can play guard to start with. You don't necessarily have to throw them to the wolves at a left tackle spot. But I think Aquano just has a little more physicality.
All right, very good. Well, let's move on to Derek Stingley, another guy that's been flying up draft boards. And I think a lot of people had Sauce Gardner probably as the number one guy a month ago, but now in the last month, it's probably switched a little bit with Derek Stingley and his 40-yard time. He tested really well in his pro day. What puts Stingley above somebody like Sauce Gardner, Trent McDuffie, and some of the other corners that you've seen in this draft class?
Yeah, I think coming into the season, and especially him coming off his freshman year, he was an elite, top three kind of a prospect. And he's had injuries the past 2 seasons, and he hasn't played as much. But I think he tried to play hurt last year, and his performance suffered as a result of it. Um, I don't, I think he maybe got a bad rap for his focus and all that, but I think he was really struggling. And then I think for the Vikings, Durante Jones, their DB coach, worked with them last year. There's a familiarity. There's kind of this LSU tradition and college to pro thing with the Vikings that goes back a long ways, probably to like Henry Thomas era. So I just think that he certainly is every bit as talented as Sauce Gardner, and I think a little more natural, a little more polished, a little more fluid with the hips and stuff like that. And again, that's taking nothing away from Gardner, who if either of those guys are there at 12, I can't imagine the Vikings not taking either one of them. But I just think I think Stingley has a more complete game as a big play cornerback who can make plays on the ball and blow things up and highlight reel kind of stuff. So
All right. That's definitely intriguing, I think, because you brought that point up. If they're both there at 12, who do you think they value more at that point? That's really interesting.
if
Like,
they if they're both there at 12, I would be pretty surprised. But
yeah, no, I think a lot of
but
people would be.
that would be a tough call. I mean, but I guess what I'm saying here with the way I have this stacked, I'd take Stingley over Gardner if that were the situation. So,
Yeah.
and maybe that's a gamble, but I do think that the ceiling is just a smidge higher for Stingley.
All right. Well, let's move on to number 7. And you got Kyle Hamilton rated there, and he's the third rated defensive back according to your Vikings big board here. So tell us a little bit about why maybe he has fallen behind those two guys. I know they play different positions, but there's some people that think that maybe Kyle Hamilton could play cornerback too. You could kind of put him all over the field. Do you feel like that's still a possibility with him, or do you
Well,
feel like he's strictly a safety?
yeah, I think he's purely a safety, but he's definitely a special prospect as a safety. I mean, he's an even better prospect at this stage coming out than Harrison Smith was coming out, and Harrison Smith has been outstanding.
Borderline
Hamilton,
Hall of Famer.
yeah, exactly, and Hamilton is just he's just a I mean, he checks all the boxes on the field, and the only negative is he didn't run a 4.4 something,
Right.
in his workouts. But that doesn't really show up on tape. Like he doesn't show up as a guy that can't keep up, or is getting is just getting having people run by him and stuff like that. And he's one of these chess piece guys that you can move him all over the place, and you can do things with him to disguise coverages and looks, and he can, athletically make all those plays. Um, he's a difference maker, and maybe the only reason he's behind the other two DBs is just a positional value thing of a corner versus a safety. That's probably the only thing that really would separate him there.
Can you imagine in some crazy world that Kyle Hamilton, Sauce Gardner, and Derek Stingley are all available at 12, and the Vikings have their choice of those three? Like, I don't think that's even. They might all three be gone at that point.
Yeah,
But
they could. I'd see if I could move down two spots.
yeah, that's kind of my thought. Two or three spots to see
If it,
which one of them falls to you and potentially get more value later in the
yeah,
draft or next year.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, that could be a really ideal situation too. But yeah, that's kind of actually what I was thinking. Like, well, maybe you do trade down then at that point, even though you'd have your selection there. I mean, I guess it really would depend on how much further they have one of those guys ahead of the others.
right, right.
So,
Yeah,
and then you got, let's move over to your number 8 guy on your big board. Let's go with Garrett Wilson. And let's just talk about all the receivers at,
sure.
at, at this time right now, or I should say the top 4, I guess we'll say. Jamison Williams, you have a few spots below the wide receiver from Alabama, Chris Olave at the 13, right below Williams. And then you have Drake London down at the 18 spot overall and the 4th wide receiver. Talk to us a little bit about that. What puts Garrett Wilson above the others, and compare those others in those spots and why you've ranked them where you've ranked them.
Sure. Yeah, I just love Garrett Wilson. The How fluid and smooth he is, um, catching the ball, and the way he just plucks the ball, and he plays like a much bigger, more physical guy competing for the ball. And he's so smooth, and he's fast, and like I think he's just a pro ready difference maker, and I think he's a Stephon Diggs caliber talent, that I think can be a dynamic influence on the offense. Um, if Jamison Williams hadn't gotten hurt, he might be rated even higher. All reports are that he's very much on track to come back and probably be ready to play this year from the knee injury. Um, the only ding on him is he's 180 pounds. He's just not a big physical guy, but of course he's probably too quick for corners to really get a good shot on anyway. And he's a playmaker, and I think he's moved up from being middle of the first to the earlier half of the first, even with the injury thing and the fact that he hasn't really run or worked out for anybody. But he's a playmaker, and he can return kicks for you right away. so he can make immediate impact, and I think the ceiling is very high for him. Olave is also very clean, smooth route runner. Um, above average length, very athletic, fast, um, playmaker. Um, Talented receivers like this are just of significant value now, and particularly with the cost of receivers going up and up and up, I think their value in a first round when are able to have them on a rookie contract for 5 years, um, it makes them even more valuable. Um, London, I think many people have rated higher than I would here, and he's a legitimate big time player who can sky for the ball and make contested catches. My thing with him has always been that he doesn't separate. I don't see many plays where he really separates from defenders. I think he's got deceptive long speed and and that, but I just and he maybe he could have dispelled that with some of his workout stuff, but he opted not to run again. So I'm just not I'm just not sure how his productivity is going to totally translate to the NFL level in his ability to separate. And maybe I'm a little paranoid about the Laquan Treadwell miss.
I was just gonna say,
You know,
yeah, I think
so
everybody's paranoid when you hear the words "can't separate" or "doesn't separate well" because they remember that when Laquan Treadwell came out, and
yeah,
shocker, that actually was a problem.
yeah,
So yeah, yeah, I boy, if it's between those four, I mean, I don't think I'd go Drake London. I think I'd go either
right,
one of those three over him. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. I wouldn't be shocked or disappointed if the Vikings went that route. If their board just came off that way,
Right.
I do feel like London would maybe be not ultimate value at that point. So
Hmm. Yeah, especially since you have him as 18, and that's yeah, that's definitely a little bit lower on the scale there. Let's go ahead and talk about the two defensive ends you have at 9 and 10, Johnson and Thibodeau. Very close. You have them graded. What's the difference between the two, and why do you have them where you have them?
yeah, you know, say again, same grade. So I think they're both very talented. I I go with Johnson ahead of Thibodeau. Mainly, I think he's just more of a pure edge guy, speed edge guy, and I think he had more production um, over the course of mostly this last season. But he was a big time producer. Not in a totally stellar program, and I think the character stuff and the work ethic and everything's just there. There's a little tightness and stiffness at the top of his bend off the edge, but that similar thing with Thibodeau, and I think they're both very very close, but I think I think Jermaine Johnson's just a little bit cleaner, less questions about what's important to him, stuff like that.
All right. Very good. Well, you have offensive tackles, a couple of them in the top five, and then they go all the way down to number 11, where the next offensive tackle is, and Charles Cross. And then the rest of the top 25 that you have here, you have Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. There at that 25 spot, you have the offensive guard Kenyon Green from Texas A&M at 19. Zion Zion Johnson, the offensive guard from Boston College, also is at The 21 spot, uh, yeah. So there's a few of them left. Why do you have each of those ranked where you do, and
Sure.
what do you like about Charles Cross there at number 11?
So Cross is probably one of the most difficult guys I've had in this whole thing, trying to figure out where to put him. Um, he's a really good pass protector, um, but I just don't know about his length and power base um, overall. So, but I think he's very talented, and left tackles that can pass protect are going to go in that range. So that's why I would put him there. Um, to compare him to the other tackle, Penning is just a monster, super physical, another tone setter guy. Tested really well, um, but he does get beat by quickness, and at the NFL level, he might struggle at times on pass pro. So that's what I see with him. Um, the guards, I think Kenyon Green is just a monster, a physical, very productive guy. Kenyon has really played 4 out of the 5 line spots. Very strong, big man, physical, moves okay. Zion Johnson is intriguing because I think he can maybe also play center, and he's a very polished and pro ready. But he doesn't have quite the massiveness of Kenyon Green. So that's why I like Green a little better.
So let's say the Vikings do trade back here, Kevin, and let's say they land somewhere in the 20 to 25 area, and Kenyon Green is still there. Do you think that's a good selection for a potential future right guard right there? Or do you think the Vikings would look somewhere else since they got Chris Reed?
Yeah, I think signing Reed doesn't preclude drafting a guy like that. And I think he would be a really solid value, less sexy, less exciting pick. But
But man, if you move back that far, you would think
yeah,
that.
yeah, and then you've picked up something else along the way too. So
Hmm.
I would be pretty happy with landing a guy like that. I think he's kind of underrated and hasn't really been talked about at all. But his tape is just fun to watch. Like he just does a consistently good job and finishes people, and he's but he's not athletic enough to be a tackle, so he just isn't getting quite the notoriety. But I think he's just a really good player.
Well, and Jordan Davis, I know we've talked about him. You kind of feel like, at least at the time, you kind of felt like he was more of just a two down or a one down type of player, not a three down player, basically.
Yeah. I just on an obvious passing down, I see him coming out for somebody else. And what what I've heard from Quasi is, they put a premium on people that affect the passing game, that affect the quarterback, or help make the passing game go. And so
Hmm.
to me, a run stuffing dominant defensive tackle, like that's great in getting you to third down. But I don't know. Um, yeah, I think he's going to be a problem for anybody to deal with because of his rare combination of size and stuff like that. But I don't think he's going to give you 60, 65 snaps a game that are impactful. Um,
Do you think that's something that he can grow in when he gets to the league?
maybe. I mean, the fact that he is just so stinking big and strong and has that natural leverage, he could very much develop into sort of a Leon Lett type of inside rush guy. Um, a big, tall, just overpowering guy like that. Right now he doesn't have a lot of polish, and I think NFL people will be able to contain him. But he can just plain bull rush and win a lot. So, but his stamina, he'll have to prove his stamina. Um, so I think that's the value spot for him is right in that probably 12 to 16 range. Um,
And
he
then,
belongs right there.
yeah, I think that's probably pretty fair for the Vikings' sake. And then you look at the linebackers, two really close there with Devin Lloyd and N'Kobe Dean. What do you like about those guys, and what separates them from one spot away there?
Yeah, I think Lloyd is, he's just closer to prototype size, and Dean is undersized. So that's really the only thing that separates those. They both make plays. They're both very instinctive. Dean is a little more explosive and flying all over the place, but really this is the kind of thing that if the Vikings had a real intense need at linebacker, they'd probably be higher up on the guys in the 6.5 scale grade scale. But I don't see that as such a pressing need, and the value of a linebacker versus the impact that receivers can make, or some of the other positions. That's about the only difference. But yeah, I think those are two really good players.
And then we go down to the number 20 on your big board. You got Malik Willis there, the quarterback from Liberty, who is potentially the number one quarterback that'll be taken on draft night. Another guy that could very well be gone by the time the Vikings pick at 12, or you never know, maybe the quarterbacks will fall. It's going to be an interesting. It's always interesting to watch the quarterback situation, regardless of if there's a
Exactly.
good, strong class or if there's kind of a weaker class like this year.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there could be a couple gems in there. You never know.
Yeah. So I see Willis as a very similar prospect to Josh Allen when he came out. Um, Josh Allen probably had a little more, uh, passing reps, and maybe a few more like big time throws. In both instances, they're not playing against a super high level of competition, so they're just a dominant arm talent, for who they played against. Everything about Willis, like he's coachable, but he's not ready. But I thought the same thing about Josh Allen. He wasn't ready, and he ended up starting as a rookie, and he did okay. And then by his second year, he was a hit. Like he's the real deal. And then I think he showed last year in the playoffs. He's an elite quarterback already. So I feel like I was maybe wrong about Josh Allen, and I think that I think Willis has maybe been overanalyzed a little bit and pigeonholed, and I just think if he ends up in the right situation, I think he can have a lot of success. And maybe not as a rookie, but by his second year, I think he could be ready like Dante Culpepper was ready in his second year. And the arm talent's there. But I don't know if I like him going to Carolina if that's how it plays out. Like I don't know. Josh Allen going to Buffalo was a good situation, and they handled him perfectly. I just don't know if that is going to happen with Malik Willis if it's Carolina. If it's Pittsburgh, I really like his chances of developing them, or if it was New Orleans or something like that. So I think it really depends on where he goes. But at that point, like like, would you take Malik Willis over a guard? I don't know. That's where I started thinking, like, okay, I got to start thinking Malik Willis here. Like, I know Zion Johnson is a good, solid player, but if I had a chance at a franchise quarterback, you know,
Even if he sits under Kirk for 2 years, I mean, that sounds like
exactly,
that could be the perfect fit there.
exactly, exactly. So, and I don't think the Vikings plan to tank for next
No,
year so they
right.
can have this shot at one of the top guys. So, if they were to trade down and then this guy just keeps sliding, I think they just might be forced to go in on this guy, knowing that they're covered for the next 2 years. So there is no pressure on this guy to
Yeah.
uh, to play right away. Although the media wouldn't allow it to stay that way very long. I mean,
Or the Kirk haters,
jumped off to CJ Ham on 3rd and 12, and they're going to want Malik Willis right now, whether he's ready or not.
Well, I've heard the comparison already, and you probably have heard it, and I don't know what your thoughts are, but Malik Willis being the next Michael Vick, maybe it's just because they wear the number 7. I don't know, but do you think he's got that kind of potential, or do you want to stop the presses a little bit here?
I think I think he's I don't think he's quite as athletic as Michael Vick, and I don't think he is as quick to abandon the pass and just take off and run. I think he's a little more patient. In fact, sometimes he's too patient, trying to make a play with his arm. But once he decides to run, he can, he can create magic, and he can keep drives alive. And that's the thing. Like, his ability to pick up a first down here and there and keep a drive alive, it extends, and covers misses he might make, by not finding the right guy and stuff like that. So he's a unique talent. He's very intriguing prospect, and he could go he could go 6, he could go 32. Um, I think at 20 he's starting to look like value to me.
Yeah, now definitely. And so let's go now to the last 3 players we haven't discussed yet, and that is Tyler Linderbaum, Andrew Booth, and George Karalaftis. And let's I know those are all 3 different positions, but talk a little bit about them each individually, why you've got them ranked where you do, and why the Vikings would maybe consider them, like if they would, again, trade back to kind of this area.
Yeah, and to me, they would be really good value for the Vikings in this area. Linderbaum's super productive, and he does anchor against the on pass protection better than Bradbury has shown. Um, but he is, he's that same, kind of undersized guy, and so there's concerns that really good teams can game plan for that in big moments in big games and take advantage of that. And regular season, he probably plays pretty well, but in big moments, I don't know how he can hold up when the other team has some real talent that they can exploit with him. And then I'm not sure about the salary cap and positional value of center. And I also think that this year's draft is probably has 3 or 4 other centers that I think can be eventual starters. But Linderbaum's super productive player, the right mentality, all the intangibles. A very good player. Booth, super talented. The biggest thing I see with him is I see a lot of footwork issues that need some cleaning up, and then he's got some medical stuff that he isn't able to clear up for the draft. So That ends up being a tiebreaker with some of these other prospects. But he's probably a top 11 to 15 talent if he's able to do everything right now. Um, Very talented, not as fluid and loose, you know, in the hips as like Stingley or Gardner, but um, a very talented cover guy. And we missed McDuffie too. Um,
Oh, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and he's the safe, secure pick. I think he's value in the middle of the round. Really clean tape, really productive, doesn't give up big plays, reliable tackler. Not a huge ball guy, not a huge playmaker, but very consistent, like the kind of guy that can just be a pesky cover guy that's hard to get open on and, next to impossible to get behind and make big plays on. Um, so in a trade down scenario, I think, he's a perfect fit for the Vikings. Um, just taking him at 12 feels like not ultimate value. I think there's those other guys that have a higher ceiling. And then Karloftis, um, he's a good physical player. I don't know how high his ceiling is. I think he can be a really good solid player and a starter and a quality player you can win with. I don't know if he has elite at the pro level, dominant potential, but and if they weren't already set with Daniil Hunter and Zadarius Smith, he'd probably be in the earlier range of the 6.4 graded guys.
All right. Very good. Well, that is the top 25. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have you go through
Well,
the
look at you.
last 5 to 7 here of the top 32, and then I think we might just summarize some of the rest of them because otherwise we might be
Sure,
here all night, Kevin.
sure, sure.
so, um,
Yeah,
but
and try to, maybe try to zero in on a second round prospect, if you will.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
So,
so Wajabo, got hurt in the workout. Otherwise, I think he's a 16 to 18, 20 caliber pick. I think he'd be a better prospect than Karloftis as an edge guy. But he blew out his Achilles, and so you're not going to get him this year. The right team that can be patient with that is going to get really good value here, most likely. And people do come back from Achilles injuries where they didn't always used to. Um, but he also was a little bit raw and green. So um, Pickens is a guy that's moved up for me the more I watched him. Like I've just seen him make too many plays, like reliable hands, great catches, great concentration kind of catches. And then, the size speed combination is outstanding and he's physical and like I just don't see a lot of holes in his game. I think he had a knee injury and he was hurt, so his production was down. But the tape I look at on him, like I just think he excites me more than some of these other guys like Traylon Burks or Jahan Watson. Um, so I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up in the first round and could be one of the top receivers in this whole draft. Um, Jalen Petrie is a guy I just love. Same thing, watching tape. His size 5'11" and an eighth, 195. It's pretty modest for a safety. But that's really the only ding on him. The guy has such incredible anticipation and instincts and playmaking ability. Um, and both him and Daxton Hill are really good athletes. Corner type speed, maybe not pure corner hips and cover ability, but good enough, and really good cover guys for safety, and can be slot guys, can slide down and cover slot receivers, I think, and also play up around the line of scrimmage and make plays and disrupt things. I think both those guys could sneak into the first round, um, and they're both players I like a lot. Burks Burks is was very productive at Arkansas. Adjusts to the ball well, has nice size. Again, the only thing I'm leery on him is just the separation. Like, I just don't know. Um, I see him run away from guys and go coast to coast untouched, but I don't see him doing that against elite competition all the time, and I don't see him being able to do that stuff at the pro level. So I'm you know I'm he's going to be an NFL receiver, um, but more back half of the round. And Devontae Wyatt is probably was more productive than Davis at Georgia, but he's also uh, kind of a marginally sized guy and overage. So I think he's probably kind of maxed out as far as how much upside he has. Um, and then my next quarterback would be Matt Corral, and I like his moxie, and like just the way he carries himself, and I think he could, again, right situation. I think he's a quality starter, and I like him better than Pickett. I think Pickett's more ready right now, but I don't see a lot of upside in Pickett. So, um, long term,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want any of these guys starting right away as rookies. Um, so I'm looking at where they're going to be 2-3 years from now, and I don't think Pickett's going to be much better. But if he gets in the right team, right situation, a good supporting cast, he'll probably be fine. So that's my top 32.
There we go. That's a pretty good list, and that's again based on the Vikings' needs and kind of where you think that they would be looking to go if it got to a certain point in these picks. Is that's kind of how I would word it, I guess. Is that kind of how you would say it too?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they end up doing a trade down thing that maybe they pick up a future one or something, and then that puts them down in this area. I think it's important to seriously evaluate these guys and what they might offer. So
All right. Well, if you want to pick out a little handful here of some of the rest of these guys on this in the top 50 here
yeah,
that you want to
so
discuss, go right ahead.
yeah, so um, Lewis Sane, very talented, has all the physical tools to do what all these other safeties can do. Um, I just don't see quite the same productivity as the other three guys we've talked about. I really like Boyamafe's upside as an edge rusher. I think he could go higher than this. Um, I just he has great first step explosiveness, long strides, closes quickly, plays hard. Um, Kyler Gordon looks very smooth, naturally talented cover guy. Just didn't run a great 40 time. So I'm not sure what kind of long speed he has. Um, let's see. Another guy of interest, Kair Elam, um, I really have gone back and forth on him. Um, Makes some great plays. Looks the part. Size, physical, speed. And then there's games where he's so handsy and screwed up with his footwork, he doesn't look like he's even going to make it. Like he looks like a bust. So I am really conflicted on him. The talent's there, but I don't know. Like he's going to have to be coached, to really make the jump. Um, Sam Hall, I've liked the more I watch him. Um, he kind of he kind of reminds me, high end potential as a cross between Drew Brees and Taysom Hill. Um, he's more sized like Drew Brees, but he kind of plays more like Taysom Hill. Like
Okay.
he's a tough physical.
Boy, the Saints would love that.
Yeah, but he can make the throws, but he's not a prototype size guy, but he's got an arm and can make the throws, and then he can hurt you, and he's not one of these slide guys. He runs like a fullback, so he's I don't know, in the right situation he could be special. Um, this Logan Hall strikes me as a really good a 3-4 defensive end. Plays his butt off. Really good motor guy. I could, he'd be a starting caliber guy for the Vikings, I think. Um,
You have Howell a little bit ahead of Desmond Ritter. Do you just feel like there's more of a ceiling for Howell than there is Ritter?
yeah, I think the yeah, I just see a little more magic there. Like Ritter looks the part and has he just very much looks the part. Good numbers, size, speed, all that. But he just seems a little mechanical to me, and I just don't know. I just don't know like how much growth potential he has. I think he can become a starting quarterback, but I'm more intrigued by the upside of Howell, I guess.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go to your next set of guys here. Go to these next ones 51 through 75. And yeah, just kind of do that same thing again. Pick a handful of guys that you would be really interested in. This is kind of getting to the back end, middle to the back end of the second round, and starting to get into the third round here.
Sure.
What are some really good potential prospects here for the Vikings as you look
So
at this list?
so Josh Pascal at 56 from Kentucky is an interesting guy. Like at first glance, I would have kind of not that excited, average size kind of thing. Uh, then you watch the guy's tape, and all he does is make plays. Like he can't be blocked. He's disruptive. Um, like he's just too good a player. I I think I don't know for sure what a 3-4 end looks like, but I think he could be a disruptive force there for the Vikings. I like him a lot. Trey McBride is a really good pass catching tight end and possibly the most developed. I mean, an underrated blocker. I shouldn't say most developed, but he's a very underrated blocker, and I think he's sneaky, fast, and athletic. And I really think the Vikings are going to pick a tight end fairly early. Um, all goes well. Irv comes back and has a really big year, and probably is going to get big money somewhere else. And the tight end they draft this year would be his heir apparent. So I think McBride is on their radar. I think Greg Duplich from UCLA is on his radar, and maybe some other guys too a little later. Um, the other thing, of course, is there's two center prospects here, Cole Strange and Cam Jurgens. And Jurgens is another one of these, kind of undersized guys, but super athletic, knows technically how to anchor, super fit for the zone, wide zone scheme, can do all those things. Uh, Strange, a little bigger, a little more leverage, a little more physical, maybe not quite as athletic, but both those guys, I think, capable of becoming starters in a post Bradbury era. Um, yeah, those are the main guys. Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, is fun to watch. He looks so remarkably much like his brother, and he's just kind of gradually gotten bigger and bigger. He looked like a little kid at first and like 180 pounds, and now he's actually up to 204, and he's I think Dalvin was 210 when he finally came out. Um,
He's not heavy. He's my brother.
exactly, he's not heavy. He's my brother. And he's got really good speed. And the other thing with Cook is he's very involved in the passing game. Like he can be very involved in the passing game, man. If you have a running back on your fantasy team, you love a running back that can also catch passes. So I think he's going to be a guy that you want to get the ball to. He's not a bell cow back, but um, you know, I think he's a playmaker. So, and I think he could. I think he has Dalvin 2.0 kind of potential, and he flashes a little Alvin Kamara at times with his ability in the receiving game. So um, I I like him a lot. I don't know that the Vikings are going to go running back, but
Yeah, you wouldn't think the Vikings would go running back until I I guess my perspective is they'd at least wait till their fifth round pick,
yeah,
but maybe not even that. Maybe sixth and maybe seventh and maybe they don't even draft one because you and I both know that running back is there's so many good prospects that get overlooked because they went to a small school. There's prospects that get overlooked because of an injury or whatever. That if you go and get one of those guys as a UDFA, they can come in and they can be productive for a few years for you. Even you know with Dalvin Cook, Alex Madison, you could find a third or fourth running back as a UDFA,
yeah,
and and that's why I'm kind of, especially with the Vikings running back room, I'm kind of anti drafting any running back right now. But he's definitely talented. There's
yeah.
no doubt about it.
And
Um,
that's the thing. There's a certain point where he's just clearly more talented than
right.
other guys of need. So, but yeah, I think I don't think they need a running back till next year when they likely will lose Madison, and
Yeah.
Cook will be 1 year closer to the end of his deal. But then they'll know probably what they have with Nwangwu.
Hmm.
And I think they like his potential a lot. So,
Yeah. And they should.
I think I agree with you. Like I think that late round UDFA running back prospects is probably more their need on that position. So
Well, let's go to your last bit of your top 100 here, big board for the Vikings. Oh man, the first guy I looked at was David Bell. I know he's number 98 on
oh,
your board here, but David Bell screams to me like he could be a steal for somebody in this draft.
so super smooth, productive college receiver. ran really poor 40 times. So
Mm,
I don't know how high
that's
you
true too.
need to place him. But I think he's going to play in the NFL. Like if he lasts till the 98th pick, he's going to make a team and play. Um, but how much big playability he has, I'm not sure. But I think I think he's a good player. Um, this Dylan Parham is uh, is another guard center prospect that would fit the Vikings. Same with Luke Fortner. I think he's another. This could be their future center, starting center. Um, at 81, I like Marcus Jones as a nickel corner return specialist. Um, I, there might be some medicals on him, so he could last longer than this. Um, but he's a pretty exciting player. But really, he is just limited to being a nickel corner, I think.
Couple
Um,
of linebackers I see, Leo Chenal from
yeah,
Wisconsin, and then Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, and then you have Damon Clark as well. Probably might be another one or two in there. Those are the ones I saw.
yeah, I
What
think
do you think this is kind of a place where the Vikings could look to go linebacker?
yeah, if obviously their depth hasn't been very good when they've had injuries, and I think they're pretty good on the two guys they have starting, but I don't know that they're counting on anything from Troy Dye or Blake Lynch or some of those guys. So I think here's
You mean Eric Kendrick's clone, Troy Dye?
yeah,
I don't know if you've seen.
maybe the long hair, but
Yeah,
that's about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
not in terms of play on the field, but
no,
looks. I mean,
yeah,
if you, there was a video, a workout video of both of them doing a workout like back to back, and it was like, whoa, whoa, is it the same guy?
yeah,
Not performance wise, but just they
yeah,
look very similar, just appearance wise, which is interesting. But
yeah,
definitely, if the Vikings had another Eric Kendricks and Troy Dye, I don't think we've seen that yet.
no, and I think he's had the opportunity. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Well, maybe not with Zimmer. Who knows?
yeah he just plays too flat footed. Like
Yeah.
Kendricks is decisive and explodes to the ball, and I think Dye just plays too flat footed. I don't think he has the instincts or trusts his instincts enough, and maybe that has been a coaching thing. I don't know, but yeah, he's talented, and he seemed like a value pick when they took him. And but I think he's been a disappointment with how he's played on the field. So any of these guys, Chanel or Asamoah, are the kind of the caliber of guys that could be an upgrade on depth and could be an eventual starter at those spots. And then a couple of these other guards, if if they don't take one earlier at some point, they need an interior lineman, a guard center. So
And then I guess two questions I've got for you on this. I know I mentioned the tight end from Ohio State, Jeremy Ruckert, to
mm.
you at one time or two, but I know you haven't had him on there yet. Is there what's kind of a red flag or two for you, at least in comparison to some of these other tight end prospects that are
um,
here?
he's just I would just have him right on the fringe of this. Like
Okay.
he's a I think he's a solid prospect. I don't know if he has really high upside, but on a good team, he can catch a lot of balls, and he's a pretty decent blocker. Um, so I think he's a guy who's going to make a team. He's going to be a backup, and he can be an eventual starter. So
Yeah.
um,
I
he'd be fourth, fifth round kind of guy to me.
I think with him, it's hard to really tell for sure how good he can be just based on his college years because he was on the same offense as those top two wide receivers
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
saw
they've
earlier.
got so many other weapons outside, but you see him make some incredible catches, like
Yeah.
some one-handed catches and stuff like that. And he runs pretty well, and he can develop as a blocker. So he could be a better pro than he was college player for sure.
But
And
yeah, I mean,
he would make sense for the Vikings, in that fourth, fifth area,
yeah,
uh,
I think
because
it's
he can become a starter. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's interesting too, like because he could be in a similar type of offense as what Ohio State has in terms of the talent. I mean, you have Justin Jefferson on the outside, Adam Thielen, you got other depth pieces at wide receiver, you got Irv Smith there at tight end as well, and you got Dalvin Cook, you got Kane Wongwu, you got Alex Madison, all these other pieces that are around him. So, you know, with all those guys, if they're all covered and he's,
Yep.
obviously they're not all on the field at the same time, but
But
he's wide open down the middle.
they're not going to pay much attention
Right.
to him when he's in there with all these other weapons. So
Yeah. Yep,
he has a
exactly.
chance to make a play here and there. Yep.
So, and then last question I have for you is Carson Strong, number 99 on your big board here. What do you feel about him other than obviously a great first name? Do you think he's got the potential to be a franchise type quarterback at some point, or do you think he's more of a backup?
Um, I think he's more of a backup, but has the arm talent and the kind of the take charge leadership that if he gets a chance, he's one of those guys that could quickly play himself into a payday. Like Tom Brady didn't get a chance until Drew Bledsoe got hurt. I'm not
Right.
saying Carson Strong's the next Tom Brady, but like he has those
199.
characteristics.
Here we go.
Yeah, he has those characteristics that in a good situation with a good supporting cast, he could light it up and be a leader, and he could emerge. So I just see some potential there.
A
But
little faster than Tom Brady, it looks like.
yeah, yeah, but he's not the kind of guy that you take early in this draft and expect him to be the guy.
Right.
He's just not. He's just not that good, and I don't think any franchise has the luxury of doing that right now. They want to win now. So
Hmm. That's exactly right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Kevin Brown's big board for the Vikings, and quite the work that you put into that, I am sure. So we appreciate you doing that and sharing some of your work with us here on the podcast today. And anything else you want to mention about the draft or the big board in general before we sign off for the evening?
um, I it's going to be a very interesting first round. In that, I really don't think there's any clear cut way it's going to break. I mean,
Yep.
usually the first 4 or 5 picks sort of go as planned unless there's a trade. I, I don't, I don't think other than Hutchinson's going to go 1 or 2 probably. I don't know if we really know what everybody's thinking and how much interest is there in the quarterbacks. I think is gonna shake things up, and maybe there's no interest and it's a free fall, and it's like Aaron Rodgers in the green room, you know, for all of these guys. I don't know, but so it's a really strange draft that way. But there's a lot of there's a lot of depth um, into the second, third, fourth, fifth round. And, you can get starting caliber guys at some positions there.
The Lions are going to shock us all and take a wide receiver at the number 2 pick, and we're just all going to melt down. We're not going to know what to do.
Well, that would certainly mix things up.
It definitely would. It
Yeah,
definitely would. That would be, maybe they feel like Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or Jamison Williams. Maybe they feel like he's one of those guys are the next
yeah,
Jamar Chase from the last class. I mean, everybody was like, and me included, I was like, when they drafted Jamar Chase, the Bengals, I was like, yeah, I know Jamar Chase is a good player, really good player, obviously, but you have this hole on your offensive line that you probably should be fixing. But they went with best player available, and they were one drive away from winning the Super Bowl. So
yeah.
um, I think they proved that best player available is always the right way to go.
Yeah, they really hit it with him. Um, yeah, and I think somewhat surprising to pick at the time. So
Do you think there's a player like that in this draft where a team is going, like, not necessarily a wide receiver, but a player in this draft where it's like, well, this team has this need or that need, but they could go with, like Kyle Hamilton or somebody else just because of the value there, and they could end up, going from, an average-ish team to a really good team and a playoff type team because they picked this best player available kind of a guy.
yeah, that's hard to say. Like I think Trevon Walker's that kind of player, and I think the Jags are, have a lot more talent than has translated on the field, and I think they
Right.
have a stable coach now, so I think they could show dramatic improvement. I think he's that kind of guy that because I don't think anybody would have thought he could potentially go number one. You know, I
Right.
don't think anybody even saw that, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Um, but he that would be kind of a surprise pick wherever he ends up going. So um, I don't know. Any of those receivers in a good situation can make an impact. So Jameson Williams could be the guy that really sort of has a Jalen Waddle kind of impact.
Mm.
You know, on a
Yep.
team. Um,
Yeah.
so the
It'll be
ones I
interesting to see for sure. Did you see that Rick Spielman is a very big fan? I don't know if we talked about that last week. Big fan of Kyle Hamilton. That
oh
he is he would love that selection for the
yep
Vikings.
yep. Well, it'd be a great pick. Like
Yeah.
it really would. Um, these
Maybe we
little
talked
clips
about
that
this last week,
Spielman's
but
doing are really cringeworthy to me. Like
what's that?
they're the little clips that Spielman does are cringeworthy. Like they're just weird to me. Um, I I don't know. He's just a little goofy to me.
Yeah.
But his evaluation of the players is very thorough and accurate. It's
Yeah.
just it's just like I don't know how much nuance there is to it. It's just
Yeah.
he's I don't know.
Yep. Yep. Well, it'll be interesting to see if he gets a job in the media. It sounds like he's going to be doing some draft work. I don't know exactly how or
He'd
when
be
or
a
what.
really he'd be a really good guy at the table for the draft
Yeah.
coach. He'd be really good at that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he would. Whether we agree with his 3 or 4 6 round picks or not.
Right.
Yeah. Quasi, I don't know if this was some sort of a shot at Rick when he said this, but he says, Well, I don't care how many seventh round picks you have; they're not worth a first round pick.
Yeah,
basically, basically, putting and it was an over exaggeration, obviously, but kind of putting Spielman under the bus a little bit. Like
yeah,
all these picks that he's got in the late round,
yeah,
it's hard to tell you. It's not worth this second round pick or third round pick or
yeah.
first round pick or whatever. It's
But
so
I
I
think
found that
it is a
kind of funny.
little. It was very funny, and it was the question that was asked like that. That was the answer that they wanted the quote from him to make that point, and then he just served it up you know, like.
Got the set and the spike right
But
down.
but
Yeah,
it isn't. It is. I don't think Spielman ever traded away the 12th pick overall for seventh round picks. So, I- you know, he
yeah,
was
right.
accumulating them with lower round stuff. Like he was just adding picks. He wasn't really
Well,
giving up anything for him.
and
So
I think that's something that we haven't talked about enough with Spielman is he knew what kind of the cap situation they had the last couple years,
yep,
and I think that's exactly why he stockpiled some of those picks because he knew they needed players, but he
yep,
also knew that he needed players on the cheap, and
yep,
I think that's a big reason why they got some of those late round picks.
yep. They needed, yeah, they needed rookie contract prospects on the depth chart, and yeah, he didn't trade the 12th pick overall for 4 sevens. That he never actually did that. He was always, he was moving down, 8 spots in the fifth round and adding a seventh. Everybody loved it at the time, and
Yep.
most of those guys are still in the pipeline. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Um,
Yeah. I think
you
it's going
know,
to be interesting to see a coach that actually pays attention to last year's draft picks.
yeah, yeah,
so,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, I'm excited to see this new regime and how it pans out. And I'm a little concerned with the front office as a whole because I feel like Quasi doesn't have a lot of like final say on some things. But I think we'll probably hear more about that as time goes on. But I feel like there's almost maybe a little bit too much collaboration going on where it's like, yeah, we care about your opinion, but we also want to make our voices heard as well, and we need to. So yeah, that's I guess that's just what I'm curious to see is if
See,
we
and
kind of see more of a Spielman draft again, where we kind of seen some of those things, or if it is kind of more of an interesting, different kind of a approach that Quasi has compared to Spielman. Because even though it's Spielman that drafted, I'm sure he had plenty of input from some of those same guys in the front office.
yeah, I think I always thought Spielman did a good job of running the draft, and I think he prepared ownership for what they were doing. I don't think he was unduly influenced, and I think Quasi is noticeably smarter, and I don't think he'll have any. I don't think he's had any problem convincing the Wilfs to do whatever he wants to do. So I don't think, like, I think he could out talk and out theorize his way, and just I have a plan and here's the plan and this is how we're going to do it. And I think they're quickly going to okay, that's what we hired you to do. I think there's going to be more buy-in when they make the picks. Like I think it's going to be more consensus picks. I think for whatever reason, Spielman and Zimmer weren't on the same page on some picks,
Or
and that,
Spielman and the rest of the front office, even at times.
yeah, or his staff, and like that just shouldn't happen very often, and
No.
and when it does, you shouldn't really hear about it because if you do the collaboration thing, then whatever you do is our decision, and it shouldn't come out later that I never liked him anyway, and
Yeah.
and so when the head coach lets it out that, oh, I never liked him anyway, well, you know, then you should have, you know, pounded the table and cried like a baby then,
Yep.
not not now. So I think
Exactly
Quasi,
right.
and what I see is, and you know, I realize they're all publicity photos and stuff like that, but they really put a lot of focus on having fun, coming to work and having fun. And he's almost always got a smile on his face when he's interacting with these people. And he's not like Rick used to like tell jokes and then be the first one to laugh at his own joke.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
There's a little cringe factor with that,
Yeah.
and you
Yep.
don't see that with Quasi. Like you see the wheels turning, and he's a really smart person.
Yeah. No,
And
no kidding.
so I don't think, you know, even if somebody comes at him with, you don't know, he can easily, um, you know, recapture their, you know, his credibility with them because he knows how to answer that. You know, he can convert an analytic thing into a layman's terms, you know, explanation.
Right.
So he's a
Yep.
breath of fresh air. He really is.
Yeah. No kidding. And that's exactly what the Vikings were hoping for. And hopefully it is going to be more good things to come for the Minnesota Vikings with this draft and with the 2022 season. I know I'm excited. You're excited. We're all looking forward to it. And hopefully, we are cautiously optimistic
Yeah,
because we all know the story too well
yeah,
of how optimism usually ends in Minnesota.
yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, Kevin, appreciate you putting in the effort there on the big board, and appreciate you sharing that with us here on the
Sure.
Skol Purple podcast tonight.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Carson. So
And as always, Skol.
let's go.